Today we have Dr. Layne Norton with us today. He's going to explain a few things. I recently was referred to you by Joe Donnelly, and your videos have really inspired me to start training and dieting healthier in all aspects of my life, especially competing with the NPC. Can you explain a little bit about your background and what inspired you to actually go all the way to get your doctorate degree?
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Well, my background was kind of getting in, like, right at the beginning, if you want to call it that. When I was a young kid, I got picked on a lot and didn't get much attention from girls, so I wanted to start lifting weights because I thought, if I get some more muscle, maybe bullies will stop picking on me, I'll get some attention from girls. And that was kind of like the selfish reasons I got into it.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually that grew into kind of a love for just the actual training itself. And when I went to college originally I wanted to do marine science. I loved the ocean. We were discussing earlier, we both like to be by the water.
Yes.
And so I wanted to go marine science, but that was right around the time I was really getting into bodybuilding, really getting into nutrition, and I knew I wanted to do science, and I was kind of starting to wane on the marine science aspect sort of things because it's just very, very difficult to get a job, and money isn't everything, but you got to have enough to live, and the average PhD salary with marine science was something like $30,000 a year. It was really brutal for the amount of education you were going to get. So I decided to switch my major to biochemistry because I knew I wanted to do something with science, and I figured if I did biochemistry, I'd have a really broad background. I could kind of pick what I wanted to do after that. And when I got to my junior year of college, I had competed a few times. I really loved it. It was my passion. And I started looking at, okay, well, what am I going to do with my life? Because I'll be graduating in a year and supposed to go out into the world. And I figured out that I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And I said, well, more school couldn't hurt. Because even though I was about to graduate and be a quote-unquote professional, I still felt like undergrad just showed me everything I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so I decided to go and attempt to do a PhD. And I looked at a lot of different universities, and I discovered I don't want to go into the whole way. It was a long story, but how I came across Dr. Layne at the University of Illinois, who kind of became a mentor for me. He was one of the first people to ever really look at branched-chain amino acids and how they affect muscle protein metabolism in terms of muscle anabolism. And that seemed like, wow, that would be really cool to study. Mm-hmm. And so I talked to him, got accepted into the University of Illinois PhD program for nutritional science, and started doing that. And while I was there, I was already writing articles for bodybuilding.com, a few different magazines, and I was getting a lot of messages every day from people with questions and doing training routines and that sort of thing. And I just decided, well, I'm spending a lot of time on this. I need to start justifying my time if I'm going to be in grad school doing this. So I started my own business, coaching people, prepping people. And that, by the time I graduated, evolved into a full-time thing. Actually, before I graduated, it was a full-time thing. And now that's what I've done ever since. And kind of expanded that brand a little bit. Now I travel all over the world, do seminars and training camps. And we did, and actually, it's kind of a nice testament. My name's gotten big enough that my friends who are experts and pros and these sorts of things, now I bring them. We did a VIP camp tour in Australia. So it's become pretty cool to where that came from, started out as a passion to now kind of going all over the world, like Ireland and UK and Australia, and now we're going to go to Canada and spreading the good word, as it were.
Yeah, I do believe that your passion and the voice through your videos, you're definitely spreading the truth, and your passion definitely comes out to it's not about you, it's about bringing people to their healthiest self and getting them to their goal. And that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because a lot of people, what people think of as health is I don't think of as health. I wrote a tweet on the other day, and I said, how many of you fitness professionals can honestly raise your hand up and say that you think you are a healthy person? And I was like, it's like crickets. You know what I mean? Like, because even if we people think that eating healthy means you never eat bad foods and all this sort of thing. And I've always said, well, no, I think being healthy means that, yeah, you take care of your health, you watch your nutrition, all these sorts of things, but you also don't restrict yourself so much to the point where you become a nutcase with regards to food. And I don't have a background in eating disorders or psychology or anything, but I kind of got very interested in it just because of the sheer volume of competitors I had coming through that had abnormal relationships with food. Now this has kind of become my passion a little bit, is talking about how I love competition, and I would never discourage people from competition who want to compete, but I see a lot of people who had completely normal relationships with food. They get into competition, they follow some bad advice, that sort of thing, and all of a sudden, boom, they've got like a full-blown eating disorder. And so people will ask me a lot of times. As you know, I'm a proponent of flexible dieting. I believe that you should be able to have that like one cookie if you can fit it into your protein, carb, fat intake, and if doing that makes it so you don't go completely crazy, that's actually better than trying to eat clean all week and then going on a bender on the weekend. I always tell people like my hierarchy of what's important. I'm not saying that people will say, well, are you trying to say that a Pop-Tart has more nutritional value than a sweet potato? That's not what I'm trying to say at all. What I'm trying to say is if eating that one Pop-Tart every once in a while keeps you from going nuts whenever you finally break, because my friend Corey Probst, she said it best. She's doing her PhD in psychology. She said self-control is fatiguing. Okay? You have a limit to self-control. No matter, nobody's a machine, nobody's a robot. Okay? You will reach a breaking point where if you haven't allowed yourself some flexibility at some point, you will go off on a food bender, okay? I talk about this stuff because I've done the same thing.
I've done it too. I'm laughing.
Exactly. I always tell people this. I'm like, I'm not speaking to you guys from upon high. I'm speaking to you guys because I've been on food benders, okay? I know what it's like.
Bad. I've done that too.
So I always talk to, like, my most important thing is consistency and hard work. Being consistent is so important, and most people tend to go like this. They fluctuate up and down because they'll just the mindset of, well, I'm just going to eat clean, and then when they have that one cheat food, they go off on a binge, and then as they're binging, they get that guilt and that thing, and they say, and they have the attitude, well, I'm just going to get it all out of my system now because this is the last cheat meal I'm ever having. I'm never ever doing this again. And it's like, no, you're going to do it again. You know what I mean? Like, that's why it's important to have flexibility. So I kind of, and the reason I tell people, like, I learned this stuff through sheer volume, just of people who went through, like, working with me, because I used to tell people, hey, eat only these foods and don't eat these foods. And now when you're in your off season, it's okay to eat these foods. But what I found through the course of working with, over 1,000 people over the last 10 years is that people just could not be consistent with that. And when it got to the off season, they could, for 12 weeks, they could do that, right? But then when it got to the off season, boom, they would blow up, and I just looked at that as like, okay, well, now the problem becomes now you have to diet even harder to get back into contest shape, and it just becomes more and more difficult. So I found that, people who especially with people I get who've never had a bad coach before them, or gotten bad advice or starved themselves, those sorts of things, if I can get them starting out, I'm able to, a lot of them, get them maybe not to contest shape, but maintain a really lean, comfortable weight for them, and still have them eat the foods they enjoy. And to me, that is a healthy place where you can have a cookie and stop, but you're still eating, enough fiber, a proper amount of protein, of carbs, of fats, and you're being consistent, and you're enjoying your training, and you're enjoying the nutrition program. A lot of people, this becomes like, they lament that everybody sees them on Facebook and Instagram, right? It's like, oh, woe is me, I'm going back in for my second cardio session today, and I'm on 1,000 calories and all this sort of stuff, and it's like, well, okay, well, why? I mean, if you hate it that much, why are you doing it? So it's something that I think is a different perspective than a lot of people have. I think a lot of coaches out there even kind of, it's almost like suffering for the sake of suffering so you can brag about having suffered the most. And what I always say is, well, I don't care. I would rather suffer the minimal amount and get the most benefit. And if I can win through suffering only 1%, then let's do it, right?
Yeah.
Now, if it takes 10%, well, then maybe it takes 10%. But I'm never going to say to somebody, okay, we're going to start you out 1,000 calories a day, 2 hours of cardio, because you need, in order for it to work, you need to be suffering.
Yeah.
So
See,
that's a long diatribe about how I kind of got to this, but I got to it from just working with people over and over and seeing. I always tell people, I think the biggest thing for a coach is not necessarily even a science background, but just to pay attention to their clients and to be willing to change your views and to care about your client. Mm-hmm. Because I believe that you will get to the right answer if you actually give a shit.
Yeah.
Pardon my French. Because you will say, okay, this doesn't work, this hurts people, this is unhealthy, so I'm going to end up here. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I ended up.
Yeah, that's amazing. But one thing I want to ask you about, because your videos have really inspired me, because I can relate to all of them. Like, for 10 years, I have damaged my body in so many ways. It's because this is almost like this desperateness inside for all my jobs. It's like, it's gross. It's really gross. It's like, because I train people too more for lifestyle, but it's almost like, what cleanse do I do? What diet pill do I need? It's like, it's just like, it's just like this panicky of like, they'll do anything to get there. And if they don't want to do, they want it now. And they don't want to put the hard work in. And some even competing, it's like, I'll do it now. So they'll torture themselves because they didn't give themselves enough time. And I've done that. And I know that doesn't have to happen. But in my mind, you gotta let go of that belief that torture equals results.
Well, we live in a society that, well, think about like my cell phone, my iPhone.
Yeah.
15 years ago, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, this is amazing, right? If this thing takes more than 2 seconds to load up the internet, I'm like about to throw it through the ground because I'm like, oh, you piece of crap. You know what I mean? So we live in a society where it's like, I always tell people it's tough for me to kind of quote unquote sell people on my coaching, because what I'm saying, I'm the crazy guy over here saying, hey, no, this is going to be really hard. We're going to take, it's a long period of time. We're going to be really consistent and be patient and not do anything extreme. And everybody's going to be like, I'm not going to listen to that guy. I'm going to listen to the guy over here telling me to not eat gluten because that's what's making me fat. So I'm just not going to eat gluten and that'll be magic. You know what I mean? It's easier to, I think, I always tell people, like, speaking in extremes is scientifically lazy. Scientists understand that there's always a gray area, and that everything is nuanced, and there is no best, worst, never, always, those sorts of things. Everything is about context, right? So a lot of people would say, there's never any way of, like, what I'll get a lot of times is people will say, well, you've made this evidence that, for example, a Pop-Tart may not hurt your health or whatever, but you can't tell me that it actually might help somebody. Well, it's all about context. I mean, for most people, is that going to be helpful for them? No. I mean, again, I look at it as helpful in that if eating something like that every once in a while, a treat like that every once in a while helps keep them sane, that's okay. But, for example, I had a guy one time with a really fast metabolism. We're talking, this guy maintained his body weight on over 700 grams of carbs per day and 200 grams of fat, okay?
God, those people.
We call those macronators, okay? So they eat all the macros and don't get fat. But he got there through a slow period of time of slowly increasing his calories. But in any case, he got to the point where he's like, Layne, please don't add any more calories. I can't eat any more food. I'm so uncomfortable. I'm bloated constantly. I said, well, what are you eating? Well, it ends up the only things he was eating for his food were quote-unquote clean sources of food. And so he was eating about 150 grams of fiber a day. So no wonder he felt like crap. His GI system was literally backed up to his esophagus. So I told him, I said, hey, look, I still want you to hit your macros. I want you to get 60 grams of fiber a day, 70 grams of fiber a day, okay, which is still a really high fiber intake. But, so that means you're going to have to eat some more calorically dense foods. So have some pizza, have some ice cream, have some Pop-Tarts, see how you feel, okay? 3 days later, he comes back and says, oh my God, I feel so much better. So again, when you're talking about is something good or bad, well, for some people it might be bad, but it's all about context. So for this guy, it was actually helpful for him. Now, again, I always tell people macros are like a budget, okay? So when I talk about Pop-Tarts and these sorts of things, if I have somebody who's prepping for a show and they're down to 100 grams of carbs a day, should they then spend 75 grams of those carbs on 2 Pop-Tarts? Well, no, because they're not going to be able to hit their protein, carb, fat requirements very well, and they're not going to be able to get enough fiber in. So it's all about context. It's like a budget. Now, if you're, like I said, if you got $1 million budget, can you afford to buy a $50,000 car? Yeah, sure. All right. If you got a $30,000 budget, can you afford to buy a $50,000 car? No, you can't. So again, I always tell people, like, it's all in context, right?
Yeah, totally.
And I'll tell people, like, you will tend to pick more quote unquote bro foods when you're dieting down just for the sheer volume of it, okay? But if you have enough macros, if you can make something fit and it keeps you sane and it keeps you from going nuts, and the biggest thing is it doesn't register mentally as a cheat, then it's worth it. And when I talk about that sort of thing, I say, people always say, Layne, how often do you have cheat days? I'm like, I haven't had a cheat day in 5 years, okay? And people are like, what? You never eat? I'm like, no. I eat pizza, I eat ice cream, I eat all this different stuff, right? But I hit my protein, carb, fat, and fiber requirements every single day, okay? And so if I want to have some ice cream or if I want to have some pizza or something like that, I fit it. And it mentally does not register as a cheat. It doesn't give you that inclination to binge eat, you know? Again, it's not something I preach from on high. This guy with a PhD in nutritional science had a binge eating problem after his shows. You know what I mean? Like, I would go out, I would eat whatever. And even the week after, I would still be eating whatever. And any competitor out there can, I mean, you know that after the show is actually the hardest part, you know? You're smiling because you've had it happen, I'm sure.
So bad. A whole thing of almond butter, not just a few. Like, yeah.
Oh, peanut butter's like, oh yeah, absolutely. It's funny because when I was a kid, I always used to have trouble eating enough, and so I would just keep a jar of peanut butter by my desk and just like take scoops out of that every once in a while, right? And it's funny, my first contest prep solved my hunger problems. I have not been full since.
Wow. It's so funny. It's so true, and it's nice that I can, laugh about it now because I've been there, and experienced every